Welcome, everyone, to the Airiam Podcast. This podcast covers topics related to cyber and human resilience. The content's geared towards owners and CEOs of small and medium-sized businesses, as well as to IT and cybersecurity leaders. My name is Ardo Kane. I'm the field CISO at Airiam. Our episode today will discuss phishing, specifically voice and text phishing. Everybody's used to the email phishing, but this is taking it into different vectors. You're seeing voice and text, as well as other phishing in Facebook and in LinkedIn these days. Joining me today is Fayon Atkinson from Corvus. How are you doing, Fayon?
I'm good, Art. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad that you were able to make time and come. We love Corvus, and so having somebody from Corvus to be able to speak to, relevant topics for our client base is awesome. So we ask everybody that joins, how do you start your day?
Yeah, so interestingly, I am not a morning person, but to start my day, I like to have a cup of green tea and sometimes avocado toast. I really love avocados. And I like a list. I am a list person because I lose track easily. So, that's how I kickstart my day, with a list and some tea.
Awesome. And a cybersecurity professional that uses lists, that is pretty stereotypical here, where, tend to be the organized ones.
Yeah.
So
that's where stereotypes.
We're discussing, exactly. Now I love the tea too, but I've been doing way too many energy drinks lately. So when we're discussing voice and text phishing, have we seen that escalate lately? Is that something that is really prevalent now? Is that something you've been seeing a lot?
Yeah. So smishing and vishing, right? I would say there's definitely a spike in voice and text phishing lately, especially with the growth of AI. I know AI is readily accessible to everyone, and so people are just bad actors or just a regular guy or gal is just leveraging that to do these type of phishing attacks for sure.
Yeah. Now anybody can use AI to craft amazing phishing attacks, regardless of what medium or avenue you're using to send the phishing. Email ones are getting incredible now. As far as voice and text phishing, you mentioned vishing and smishing. Can you kind of go into what those are for those who aren't really familiar with voice and text phishing?
Yeah. So I would say voice and text phishing, short voice being vishing, and text or SMS is smishing. I would say they have essentially the same goal, right? Essentially, they are targeting individuals and tricking them to get some sort of sensitive information, such as identity theft, account takeover, or mostly financial gain, right? Mm-hmm. And so by text, it's literally what it says. They send something via text message. It could be a link. It could be a message that warrants some sort of immediate action, or via phone call, or sometimes they'll leave voice messages saying, hey, this is urgent, and have someone provide sensitive information.
I've been getting a ton of those lately.
Same.
As far as, it just seems like, I'm almost afraid to answer the phone when it is not a contact I know. But, because, chances are it's a threat actor trying to manipulate information out of me, so it really changes how we think about our phone as communication device nowadays. So as far as phishing techniques, phishing is really social engineering. As you mentioned, it's kind of, the threat actor is trying to get information from you. They're usually your creds, or getting you to sign into something for them. But, it could be something else that they could be using. As far as well-known phishing techniques, we've seen, at least I've seen, a lot of what I would consider caller ID spoofing. and people pretending to be someone else when they are calling you. And I know, when you're setting up a phone line, you can really set it up to be whoever you want, appear that way when you're making a call. So I could set up a new phone line and say that my caller ID should say the IRS. And so when I call somebody, it'll show that the IRS is calling. As far as caller ID spoofing and impersonation, is that really what we're discussing, or is there more to it that you know of?
Yeah. So I've seen the caller ID spoofing in terms of the phone phishing.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen with the text message. I've seen the technique of I've gotten actually the FedEx ones or the UPS ones,
Mm-hmm.
the mail, like, hey, you have this package. Or sometimes I'll see the bank account ones where it says, oh, your card has been blocked if you log in. So now you're clicking on a link and then you're putting your banking information, and then boom, someone steals your credential to your banking information. Those are just some of the known common techniques I've seen.
Yeah, I think the UPS or FedEx ones are so common. And then, the invoice fraud, concept. And I've gotten them via text message as well. Your invoice is ready, putting your payment information. Your invoice has been approved. Click this link and putting your payment information, that kind of thing. And, somebody who isn't really on their toes might just be like, oh, I'm about to receive money. Let me put in my info. So it is something to watch out for. You had mentioned earlier urgency. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I think the language in some of these messages or on these phone calls, it sort of tricks someone without even thinking, because they sort of give you an extra push, like, hey, do this quickly. Like, I have an interesting story of these smaller chain hotels, like the 3-star hotels. I don't want to say names here, but they'll have a worker someone working like overnight, like the front desk person working overnight. And so it's like 3 a.m. And so they got a call from someone pretending to be IT support. And they're like, hey, you have to update your system immediately. And, being that early, they are probably, not aware of what's going on, thinking it's normal procedures. They allow someone access, the person on the phone, tell them, hey, you need to do this, download this, we're going to send you a link. And they followed suit. Yep. And essentially gave someone access to the company's computer and their network. So yeah, it's that sort of urgency. And I think these guys are very tactful when identifying, like, okay, what are we going to do this? How are we going to approach it? But yeah, that sense of urgency. The IRS one is usually around the tax time, like around February, January. So yeah, it forces people to like, oh my gosh, something's going on. Let me do this immediately. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what you said with that kind of case study about the hotel, that kind of, not only impersonating IT support, but using urgency together, really making it so it's extremely believable, and the person's not really taking time to think about it. And it would be easy for most people at most organizations to fall for that kind of thing. You're getting a call, at an odd time, and so it's got to be an emergency because it's not during normal work hours. So now you feel pressured into service, to do what you need to do. And yeah, that's exactly why people fall for that. That's a great case study. I'm sure from where you are you seeing a lot of kind of cases come in that are related to, loss that is related to phishing?
Yes, we'll see some level of loss, especially with the invoice manipulation, a ton. And sometimes we'll see, this one is very old, right? So I'm sometimes usually like surprised or alarmed that, we still have victims, or people fall victim for the credit card, or not the credit card, the gift card scams,
Yes. Yeah.
they'll get a text message. It could be like from the CEO and saying, hey, go get this. This should be a surprise for the entire team because everyone is performing so well. And someone go out and buy it. But, I think they usually target like newer employees. And I think that's why they fall victim. And I see a loss there. And then also with the invoice manipulation. And again, we talked about with AI, how with the help of AI, they can easily do just about anything, right? And so with the invoice manipulation, adjusting the contact information, someone picks up the phone, even if they have the policy in place in the organization, picking up the phone to call this person saying, hey, did you make this adjustment? Most times they'll call the contact that sends that text message or email. And so they're speaking to an impersonator as opposed to a legitimate contact. So yeah, that results in losses sometimes.
Yeah, I'd imagine that the like Apple Card or the Google Play Card, even though it's been out for 15 years, is still, effective, especially if you're framing the story where it makes sense. Hey, go and buy this for everybody, we're going to do this, that kind of thing. As far as things that have changed and kind of new phishing techniques, is there anything new that you're seeing now or is it all pretty much the same thing just through text and voice now?
Yeah, I think an interesting one is that sextortion scam. I feel like I've seen that. I've even personally, I don't think I've gotten like the nude searches or text, but I've gotten like, hey there, do you remember me? Which is interesting because sometimes I think someone has the wrong number and I'm like, hey, you have the wrong number. And they continue to have that conversation. I was like, oh my gosh, did I fall victim to something? Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually been getting that at least once a week. It seems like, and even start the conversation, but I know it's going to lead to either that or a threat actor trying to manipulate information out of me. It's a strange number and it's a, hey, or, I had a great time last night or something like that, or just starting a conversation like that. And, where it's clear that they're expecting a response and, it's just somebody baiting you. And now with the use of AI, that can all be automated. So they can be doing it to 30,000 people at a time and really running that whole phishing scam through chatbots. So it makes it, I think it makes the volume higher. And with the higher volume, it's going to make a chance of success higher. Yes. Threat actor is going to hit somebody who's going to fall for it. And that's the scary part. Yeah.
So I have the iPhone, and so there's this feature where you can block a number if they text you or report it as spam or some feature they've added recently to the newest updates. And for those same text messages, I feel like I blocked those numbers and they kept coming back. Like, I was like, how is this even possible with a different name? Like, hey, this is whoever. And it's the same formatting. You can definitely tell it's like, a chatbot or something, but yeah, they don't give up.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that actually frustrates me about the phones, the smartphones and everything is that I use an Android, and in the Droid, in the call settings, I have pretty much my security set as high as possible. I'm like, if it's spam caller, send it to voicemail, automatically reject, that kind of thing. They still come through and they're still labeled as probable spam or probable scam call. And I'm like, why is the phone letting it through? So whatever manipulation they're doing on their end, whatever, number skipping or, impersonation or, whatever tricks they're playing on their PBX side of the, the phone system side of the attack, it's getting past really like the normal security controls. So there's not a lot to do right now to actually avoid that. You just have to be intelligent and thoughtful. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely be vigilant for sure.
Exactly. So some other types that we've seen, the tech support you mentioned, where they're really trying to get remote access. The bank impersonation is one. I've seen ones from, PNC Bank, different banks, where it'll look like a bank, sending you a thing saying, click here and reset your PIN. There's been an fraudulent access to your account. Sign in here and reset your PIN or something like that. And it's not the bank. It's actually the threat actor just trying to grab your banking credits. And, there's the IRS around tax time. Debt collector is another one too. It's where they're, really threatening action if you're not paying a debt. And it's a way to, then they're going to say, okay, well, I'll take payment from you over the phone. Give me your payment information and we'll settle this debt. And that can be scary because sometimes you're like, okay, how do they know about these debts? Because some of them are using real debts.
They are.
But they have access to your credit, et cetera. It's, they're already looking at information about you when they're making these calls. So they know that, hey, you have this much credit card debt, I'm going to call and pretend like I'm this company trying to deal with it, So, yeah.
I have a few voice messages about debt, some of them are not legitimate or, let's see, some of the other, I can't remember the other ones, but I do have a couple messages. And as soon as if I see a number and it doesn't have scam likely, because that's what pops up on mine, and I answer and I hear, hello, you owe this amount, and to make a payment, press this. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do they even know this information? But, usually when it comes to stuff like this, I tell everyone, most of us, our information is already out there. So it's easy for them to access it anyways. It's just trying not to fall victim to those scams.
Absolutely. So verifying the threat actor against your PII is not really a good way to ensure that they aren't a threat actor. The hacker has access to all the information about you on the internet. So they can act like they have that information, So yeah, that's scary. And so you don't know which ones are the real, who's the real billing department and who's the scam billing department. And so it's, maybe just wait for the bill in the mail and deal with it that way rather than a phone call.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the kidnapping call, I've seen some press about this recently with AI, where they have called a person and demanded a ransom, basically saying that there's a kidnapping and, saying that, we have your daughter, and, proof of life, they're giving their voice, a voice sample, on that, and able to give a completely believable kidnapping story and demand a ransom. And when in fact the kid's fine, the daughter's in college, nothing ever happened, but the threat actors were using that information, voice samples, etc., to formulate this fraud call and then demanding wire transfer ransom for that. So that's obviously, it's far beyond just phishing at that point. There's a lot of things going on, but that's just to illustrate really how far this can go via telephone, via a phone call. And there's a lot of manipulation and a lot of social engineering going on.
A lot. And using AI does not help either. I can just imagine. And we talked about that urgency, that sense of urgency again. It's like, it's a kidnapping. We need it now. No time to think.
Exactly. And I can imagine what it would be like to get one of those calls. And AI generated deepfake off of your, your kid's voice to sound like your kid is actually saying, whatever the kidnapper is trying to get them to say. That is, that's ridiculous. And the fact that all that tech is right there for anybody to use right now is the scary part. So it's really, you're depending on human ethics to not stop this. There's not a whole lot of technical control that can prevent this at this point.
It's really not. And I'm really interested to see how, the law enforcement is going to approach this, as tech evolves, as AI evolves,
I wonder how many crimes are going to get blamed on AI rather than the human behind it, or get blamed on the tech, or really and through automation systems, and how it'll be really hard to hold people responsible for some of these things. And to me, that's like, it's just accelerating the threat with more anonymity and with better, just better fraud and better social engineering. And I don't know if law enforcement is going to be able to keep up at all, but it would be cool if they could.
It would be.
Yeah. So text, the wrong number text. Have you seen any crypto scam text?
I don't know that I have seen any of the crypto ones.
Yeah, I haven't either, but I hear that is something that is happening a lot right now. And it may just be that the circles that I'm in, I'm not on that list. But the sextortion scam I have gotten, I've received that via email, and, they do a similar thing via text where they say, hey, we've hacked your phone. Here are all your, we have access to your nude selfies or whatever. And, here's click here and go and pay, and we won't release it to the world. And of course, I'm just like, okay, release it, but, there are some people, I've actually gotten calls from clients that have been very concerned about this. And they're like, well, somebody has access to my phone. I need to pay the ransom right now. And what I will say to people, anyone listening to this, is that no one actually hacked your phone in this case. They're sending that using information that they've found on breach sites to everybody. They're using information that is available to them to manipulate you using the scam. So, you may have seen the ones where it's like, hey, we know your password was this. We have all of this data about you. And that password may have been some password that was breached, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, didn't the sextortion scam sort of peak during the pandemic?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, because I think we've seen a few cases that come in related to this.
Yeah. They basically moved it to the phone now, instead of just, you'd get the email. Now you'll get a text message, but it's really the same thing. And we mentioned the FedEx and UPS, getting those text messages and notifications. One thing to keep in mind is that, if we're getting a notification via text about a package delivery and saying click here, etc., on the text message, you may not have ordered something. And so you don't need to go clicking the links in there. And that is one thing that I have seen people, even that I know, fall for, that are very, security-minded people that have fallen for this because they're like, oh, well, someone must have sent me something. Let me log in here and get the tracking information. And that is really effective because everybody likes to receive packages. Everybody likes to get mail.
Who doesn't?
Exactly. So that's one that, has jumped from email to text very effectively, and that they're using right now.
Yeah, and I would say the like paying attention to the URL sometimes is super helpful because it doesn't look anything like, like a FedEx or a UPS URL. And then sometimes the language is a little off. It's like, this doesn't make any sense, So yeah, that one, it's super easy to fall victim, especially for someone who's not very security mindset.
Yeah, especially when you're getting texts. A lot of people are sending the shortened URLs, so it's like bit.ly and then the rest of some code for the URL. In general, don't click on those. Like it could be legit, but it's also a great way to mask a bad URL. So you mentioned a couple things. You mentioned urgency, the language, looking at the URLs, etc. Do you have any other guidelines on like how to recognize phishing?
Yeah, some other, so I mentioned URLs. So I would say like government entities will never like send a text message or call you to do anything. You're likely going to get something in the mail. So just be mindful of that. Even with the banking alerts, those fake bank alerts, 9 out of 10 times it's not going to look like how they formulated. And then also I would just rather call my bank first before just clicking on anything else. We talked about that sense of urgency. And then I also mentioned some of the language. The language oftentimes doesn't make sense. So those are just some of the ways to recognize some of those type of scams or phishing attacks.
It seems like a lot for people to keep track of, but once you get in the rhythm of it can be easier. It's just like gaining awareness to all those things.
Yeah, I would say pause before doing anything. Just let's take a step back and what are the things that Art and Fayon talked about? Is it an urgent text message or phone call? Okay, maybe let me take a step back and hold off, or let me investigate personally before I do anything or follow the directions of this text message or phone call.
And if it's something regarding work, like that hotel call, with the tech support, it seems urgent, so it seems like something to jump on. But one of the key things for anything is voice verify where you can with someone else. And I'd say the appropriate thing there would be to hang up with that person and say, okay, let me call your manager and see if you can call IT and get more details. But I know in the midst of it, nobody's thinking that. So that can be very hard. And can you think of other ways that phishing or vishing or smishing affects businesses? I know that we've talked a lot about these affecting really individuals, but from a business point of view, how have you seen it impact companies?
Yeah, I would say for companies, it's usually that big financial loss and reputational loss too, right? Because especially with that invoice manipulation or requests for a fraudulent request to send funds to that fraudulent, the fraudulent funds transfer, sending funds to that fraudulent bank account, or even with employees, payroll manipulation is big. That's a big one. So yeah, usually a ton of financial loss, and especially if a business works with customers or vendors directly, that reputational loss is also a huge, like that business relationship. It impacts that. I've seen that quite a bit.
Yeah, the payroll one adds a little complexity to it, because usually I go out of the way to really tell you go out of the way to train your finance people and the people that are in procurement and the people that have authority to spend money and use money. You train them in fraud prevention, and they get some extra, voice verify, stuff like that. They get some extra training and some extra controls around them. But if they're attacking just every employee, with payroll fraud, links to verify their paychecks accounts or to, change their payment information, et cetera, then it's targeting people that may not have had that fraud training. And so they aren't as aware as somebody in the finance department might.
Yeah. Yeah. And, some business too may not have a policy where they, just call that employee or whatever protocol they have in place to like you said, check all the boxes before going through with any financial adjustments, I would say. Yeah, I've seen where they don't do that a lot.
Yeah, I have. It seems every company has their own policies, and a lot of people play it loose because they think they know who the customer is that's contacting them, and that's where that impersonation can really bite you, because you think you trust this customer that you're getting this invoice from, but it's really some hijacked account or another account, a Gmail account maybe, that says the person's name or says that company's name, and is then trying to manipulate you to pay an invoice to a different account number, etc.
Yeah, even with the payroll, I know sometimes with companies that the payroll could be tied to the personal account. So while it's your corporate email, could also using your personal email as a sort of a secondary email. And so they may have gotten access to that email, or we're getting into some level of social engineering, business email compromise there, but they could use that information because most times it's public, right? And they could spoof, do like changing like a letter or so in that email and request it from HR, and then boom, payroll is being deposited into that fraudulent bank account easily because someone didn't call that employee saying, hey, did you make this change? We need to just validate or verify that you did.
Yeah. I think that you touched on something there too, with just BEC being different than phishing, and I think it's important for us to recognize these are different kinds of attacks, but they definitely can be linked.
Mm-hmm.
Phishing maybe how someone gets a hold of your account, and then from that account they're starting to do other invoice fraud and things like that. So keeping an eye out for that phishing is kind of that front door there. As far as the staff training, you talked a lot about what to watch out for. What do you think about as far as like an interval? How should companies bite off that task of training their team?
Yeah, I would say security awareness training is something at Corvus we push for. Like every time I get on a call with someone, I was like, yeah, make sure you do security awareness training, because that human error is usually the sort of the biggest pain point. So most standard, what we'll see is quarterly training, and then doing some level of security awareness training quarterly, and doing routine phishing training. And then if someone falls victim, or they bite the bait, you do additional training for them. So I think quarterly is sort of a good benchmark.
And as far as the phishing training, have you been seeing anybody that's capable or using like SMS phishing training?
I don't know that we've seen SMS phishing training. I haven't seen it on my side.
Nope.
Do a ton here of training, and I haven't been a victim yet. But these are mostly email.
Nope.
Have you seen the SMS?
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. I've thought about how to do it, if I was going to build my own tool, but, all of the normal phishing training tools out there are all email based. So, as far as actually giving someone that SMS look, it's not something that's built in the current solutions, at least that I've seen so far. So it would be easy to pull off because there are a ton of ways to send a text message, via API call, that kind of thing. So, it could be written into software to start doing that. But right now it's like we have to depend on email phishing training to really get people's awareness up so that they're able to watch for it across any platform. And just hopefully 100%. That's transferable. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. But I would say staff training is crucial, including, just whenever there's a training, include all types of cybersecurity attacks.
As far as security protocols, we have talked about training. We talked about doing voice verification, and that's when you receive a text or a phone call about something, and, you need to call the bank, let's say, and verify that this call you received or that this text you received is legitimate, or this email. It's really verifying a transaction or verifying a change, that kind of thing. What other security protocols? Like, it just seems like there's so much lack of control over phishing, especially with SMS and with voice. Are there any security protocols that companies should put in place to help protect them beyond training and maybe voice verification?
So phishing as an umbrella, I would say, and while it's not applicable to phone and voice, but for emails, routine password changes for financial accounts. If you've gotten some sort of SMS or some call about it, changing password, building out policies in your organization where employees can easily follow guidelines on, okay, that verification, contact the financial institution if something happens. Sharing this information with others. So if you've noticed something, reach out to IT and say, hey, I noticed something. Maybe IT can develop a sort of a training across the company. Those are just some of the controls. From the IT perspective, I think last year, Mitel had a vulnerability for their voice over IP. And I would say for those that use those, routine patch management is essential here.
Yeah, and what that really enables is for people to hijack those lines, and
exactly,
and which allows that impersonation that we're talking about. And somebody can call you pretending to be this company that they basically hijacked the phone system of.
Exactly, and with that one, there's no scam likely or fake number showing up. This is a legitimate line.
Yep, exactly. You're actually using that company. Yeah. So that's definitely something. If you have a phone system internally at your business, to make sure that it is managed and patched by someone, because there are new vulnerabilities coming out all the time. As far as other security controls, I know it's beating a dead horse, but I'll never stop on this one. MFA, just because, even if you're hijacked via, a voice call or a text message. Let's say you get a text message and you go and log into some site, and you just gave them your creds. That it's still important for you to have MFA across your financial institutions, across, all of your email accounts, all of your remote access accounts, et cetera. So that if those creds, if you just did make a mistake and gave the creds to the threat actor, you didn't just give them access by giving, by not having MFA. So it's one thing that I've been just drilling at everybody, MFA, and I get the most pushback from the people that are actually the biggest targets.
Yes.
Like the CEOs of the company don't want to enable MFA. They're the ones that everyone's trying to attack. Like,
they're the targets.
Exactly. Yeah.
They'll be the one to say, oh no, that's taking too much time. I don't want to do that. And it's like, no, but they target you. The other one I would throw in there too, in addition to just MFA, is securing email, sort of like email filtering. Even though this is particularly for email, you can, have those options to really scan for targeted executives, so CFOs, CEOs, and so forth.
Yeah, and some of those controls can kind of help if you're a part of a bigger campaign that may be affecting your voice and text. Having that email security may draw your eye to another problem. What I mean is, let's say you get a text message or a phone call from someone saying, hey, this is so-and-so support. There's an emergency. We need to get into your computer. I'm going to email you this link. Can you go to this link and download this package? And then you're like, okay, I'm waiting on my email. And then you get the email comes through, and there's all these flags that are saying, highly suspicious, do not click. This is phishing. This is a scam. Like, if you have the right security tooling, it's less likely that you'll click on that thing then because it has already been red alerted by the system. Something that is just text is probably going to get away. It's not going to get picked up, but something where it's a part of, their process is also using email. Email security can actually help you there.
Yes, I agree. But yeah, MFA, I push for that. I think for us, that's like, a requirement for most organizations. And it's super, super easy to enable now. Like everyone's doing it, some level of MFA now. So
we've talked about a lot around phishing, and phishing is, it feels old to me. Like it feels like, okay, we're having another thing about phishing, but there has been so much that has changed. And especially with the introduction of AI, really in this last year, that has really, escalated the capabilities of the threat actor. So it became relevant again, and more relevant than ever. Before we conclude, is there anything that you'd like to kind of add about, Corvus, about how people can help protect themselves, about anything, your favorite color?
I would say at Corvus we have in-house cyber experts, so incident response, cybersecurity, threat intel, and we help our policyholders right throughout their journey with us. And so we have a lot of resources available, whether that's, an article about what we're seeing in the cyber threat landscape, or an article about MFA and how to implement it and why it's important across the board. We have that available. It's on our website. We have blog posts that go up, corvusinsurance.com. We work with a lot of third parties. If someone's looking for an outside party to come in to assess their environment, to say, here's what you need and here's how to prevent something like this from happening. We work with Airiam too. They're on our vendor dashboard. So Corvus is loaded with a ton of resources for policyholders, and some free resources for anyone if they visit our website.
Awesome. And what I will say is that Corvus is a part of the cyber insurance industry that's leading the charge as far as improving security for everybody. Right now, there's, regulation lags, law enforcement lags, everything else is lagging. So, the adjustments to the policies and really the controls that insurance vendors are requiring are actually what is improving the security for everybody. That is beating any other control mechanism in the pace of improving security. So thank you for being a part of that and for helping, improve security for everybody.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I absolutely love it. I love what I do. I love helping organizations, harden their security so they can save money and prevent any cyber related incidents.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This was a great discussion. And for any of you that are listening, please subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. New episodes are generally every other Wednesday. For more information about Airiam, go to www.airiam.com. Thanks.
Thank you.